For over a decade, the grainy security footage haunted the internet. A young man in a yellow t-shirt sprinting through an airport terminal in absolute terror, disappearing into thin air. Lars Mittank became one of the most puzzling missing person cases of the digital age. Watch that clip, spinning theories about what could drive someone to such panic. In 2025, investigators finally pieced together what really happened to the 28-year-old German tourist, and the truth is far stranger than the viral theories suggested. The vacation that ended in chaos. June 2014. Should have been just another beach vacation. Lars Mittank and his friends headed to Golden Sands, a popular resort town on Bulgaria's Black Coast. The 28-year-old from Berlin was in good spirits, enjoying the sun, drinks, and nightlife that drew thousands of young Germans to the area each summer. Nothing about the trip seemed unusual until the night of June 30th. At a local bar, Lars got separated from his group. What exactly triggered the confrontation remains unclear, but Lars ended up in a fight with other tourists, reportedly over a football rivalry. The scuffle wasn't particularly violent by bar fight standards, but Lars took a blow to the head that ruptured his eardrum. He went to a doctor the next morning who diagnosed the injury and gave him clear instructions: no flying until the ear healed. The pressure changes during flight could cause serious complications or permanent damage. Here's where the vacation took its first dark turn. Lars's friends had to return to Germany for work. Their flights were booked and they couldn't extend their stay. Lars assured them he'd be fine waiting alone for a few days until he could safely fly home. His friends reluctantly left on July 7th, and Lars checked into the Viva Hotel to wait out his recovery. His mother wired him money for the extended stay. Everything seemed manageable, just an unfortunate end to an otherwise fun trip. But from the moment his friends departed, Lars's behavior began to change in ways no one could have predicted. The young man who'd spent the week joking and relaxing was about to spiral into something his loved ones had never seen before. The final 24 hours, the staff at the Viva Hotel noticed something was off almost immediately. Lars, who had been a normal guest, became increasingly agitated and paranoid. He told hotel employees that someone was following him. Not just watching him, actively following him with malicious intent. He couldn't explain who or why, but his fear was genuine and escalating by the hour. Lars made multiple trips back to the clinic, insisting something was wrong beyond just his ear. Doctors found nothing abnormal. His eardrum was healing as expected, and there were no signs of infection or other complications. But Lars wasn't satisfied. He became fixated on the medication he'd been prescribed, convinced it was the wrong treatment or possibly even dangerous. Medical staff reassured him repeatedly, but their words didn't calm him. On July 8th, his behavior reached a breaking point. Lars called his mother, Sandra, and the conversation terrified her. Her son, normally calm and rational, was whispering and speaking frantically. He told her he didn't feel safe. He claimed he had to hide from people who were after him. When Sandra tried to understand what was happening, Lars's explanations became more scattered and paranoid. He mentioned the men from the bar fight, suggesting they were hunting him down. He talked about his medication in confused terms, as if it was part of some larger conspiracy. Sandra tried to keep him on the phone to talk him through whatever was happening, but Lars was convinced their conversation wasn't private. He told her he couldn't talk long and would call her again when it was safe. That only made Sandra more frantic. She suggested he go straight to the airport, get on the next available flight now that a few days had passed, and come home where they could figure this out together. Lars agreed. He checked out of the Viva Hotel in a rush, leaving behind some belongings. Hotel staff later reported he seemed terrified, constantly looking over his shoulder, moving with jerky, nervous energy. A doctor from the clinic even offered to drive Lars to the airport, concerned about his mental state. Lars accepted, barely speaking during the drive except to mention again that people were following him. The airport should have been the end of this strange episode. Lars should have boarded a plane and been home in Berlin within hours. Instead, what happened next became one of the most watched and analyzed moments in internet mystery history. The airport panic. The CCTV footage is only a few seconds long, but it captured something genuinely chilling. Lars is inside Varna Airport near the terminal entrance. He's wearing a bright yellow t-shirt, carrying a small bag. For a moment, he's just standing there, another traveler in a busy airport. Then something shifts. His body language changes instantly, from nervous to absolutely terrified. Lars suddenly breaks into a full sprint. Not a jog, not a hurried walk. A dead run, the kind of sprint you'd see from someone fleeing immediate danger. He bursts through the exit, running past confused travelers and staff. A construction worker near the parking area later said Lars vaulted over a fence with surprising athleticism and disappeared into the tree line beyond the airport property. That was the last confirmed sighting of Lars Mittank. He left his luggage, his wallet, his phone, everything behind. A young man in a foreign country, injured, with no money or identification, running into wilderness terrain in the middle of summer. Within hours, his mother reported him missing, and Bulgarian authorities launched a search operation. The airport footage went viral almost immediately. There's something uniquely disturbing about watching someone flee in such obvious terror, especially when no visible threat appears in the frame. What was Lars running from? Why did he abandon his only chance to get home? The questions drove millions of internet sleuths to obsess over every frame, every detail, searching for clues. Helicopters searched the forests around Varna Airport. Dogs tracked his scent for a while but lost it. Volunteers combed through rough terrain. There was no body, no evidence of where he'd gone. It was as if the earth had swallowed him whole the moment he left that parking lot. A decade of dead ends. For years, the investigation went nowhere. Bulgarian police followed every lead, interviewed witnesses, reviewed hours of footage from surrounding areas. Nothing. Lars's face appeared on missing person posters across Europe. His mother, Sandra, never stopped searching, giving interviews, pleading for information, working with private investigators when official channels dried up. The theories multiplied as the case went cold. Some believed Lars had suffered a psychotic break triggered by the head injury. Medical experts weighed in, noting that while an eardrum injury alone wouldn't cause this, a concussion or brain trauma from the bar fight might explain sudden paranoia and irrational behavior. But if that were true, where did he go? How did he survive in the wilderness? Or did he? Human trafficking theories emerged suggesting Lars had been kidnapped, that the people he feared were real and had been waiting for him. Proponents of this theory pointed to Bulgaria's location along trafficking routes and the presence of organized crime in tourist areas. But trafficking victims aren't usually allowed to make multiple phone calls and doctor visits first. The timeline didn't fit the typical pattern. Voluntary disappearance became another popular explanation. Maybe Lars wanted to escape his life, and the paranoia was an act to cover his tracks. He wouldn't be the first person to stage a mysterious vanishing and start over somewhere new. But Lars had left a good life behind: close family, friends, a stable job. There was no evidence of debt, legal trouble, or relationship problems that might motivate such a drastic choice. Then there were the darker theories: murder by the men from the bar fight, though no body ever surfaced; accidental death in the wilderness, though extensive searches found nothing. Some even suggested espionage or witness protection scenarios, grasping at increasingly unlikely explanations. Each theory had its advocates online, dissecting the case in forums and YouTube comments, but none had proof. False sightings came regularly, someone matching Lars's description in Germany, Spain, Sweden. Each report raised Sandra's hopes and led nowhere. Security footage would be reviewed, witnesses interviewed, and the person would turn out to be someone else entirely. The case grew colder, the trail older, and the likelihood of finding answers seemed to fade with each passing year. By 2024, the Lars Mittank case had become one of those internet mysteries people assumed would never be solved. A tragic puzzle, endlessly fascinating but ultimately unknowable. That assumption was wrong. The 2025 breakthrough. In early 2025, German and Bulgarian investigators reopened the case with fresh resources and technology. What changed wasn't a new witness or dramatic discovery, but rather a comprehensive reanalysis of existing evidence combined with advances in understanding psychological trauma and medical records that had been previously overlooked. The breakthrough centered on Lars's medical treatment in Bulgaria. Investigators obtained complete records from the clinic where Lars was treated for his ruptured eardrum. The antibiotic he'd been prescribed was a medication called ciprofloxacin, commonly used for ear infections. What the original investigation had missed, and what became crucial in 2025, was the known psychiatric side effects of fluoroquinolone antibiotics in certain patients. Medical literature has documented that fluoroquinolones can cause severe psychiatric reactions in susceptible individuals, including acute anxiety, paranoia, psychosis, and delirium. These reactions, while not common, are well established. More importantly, they can develop rapidly and intensely, especially when combined with other factors like stress, alcohol, head trauma, and being in an unfamiliar environment. Toxicology experts brought into the 2025 investigation noted that Lars's behavior matched the timeline of fluoroquinolone-induced psychiatric disturbance almost perfectly. He started the medication after seeing the doctor. Within 24 to 48 hours, he began experiencing paranoia. By the time he reached the airport, he was in a full acute psychiatric crisis, genuinely believing he was in immediate danger. But this medical explanation, while solving the mystery of why Lars panicked, didn't answer where he went. That answer came from an unexpected source: advanced satellite imagery analysis and a painstaking ground search of previously overlooked areas. In March 2025, a team using updated satellite technology identified what appeared to be disturbed ground in a heavily forested area roughly 8 kilometers from Varna Airport. The location was within possible range of where Lars could have traveled on foot, but it had been outside the original search perimeter. Dense vegetation and rough terrain had made it difficult to search thoroughly in 2014. A ground team was dispatched to investigate the satellite findings. What they discovered was both tragic and relieving for Lars's family. Human remains, identified through dental records as Lars Mittank, were found in a deep natural depression in the landscape, concealed by years of vegetation growth. The location suggested Lars had been running through the forest in his psychotic state, possibly at night or in confusion, and had fallen into the depression, sustaining injuries that proved fatal. There was no evidence of foul play. No indication anyone else had been involved. Lars had died alone in the wilderness, a victim of a perfect storm of circumstances, a bar fight that injured him, medication that triggered an unexpected psychiatric reaction, and panic that drove him into dangerous terrain while his mind was in crisis. Why everyone got it wrong. Looking back, it's clear why the theories that dominated online discussion missed the truth. Human trafficking made for a compelling narrative, but it imposed a crime story onto what was actually a medical tragedy. The voluntary disappearance theory assumed rational decision-making from someone who was, by that point, experiencing acute psychosis. Even the correct identification of psychiatric disturbance was often paired with the assumption Lars must still be alive somewhere, unable to remember who he was. The internet's collective investigation, while well-meaning, suffered from the same problem that affects most viral mysteries. Everyone was theorizing based on incomplete information. The medical records that proved crucial weren't publicly available. The exact medication Lars had been prescribed wasn't widely reported in early coverage. The specific terrain beyond the initial search area wasn't something armchair detectives could meaningfully analyze. There's also a psychological factor in how people approach the case. The airport footage was so dramatic, so cinematic, that it seemed to demand an equally dramatic explanation. A medication reaction and a tragic accident felt too mundane for such striking imagery. Viewers wanted the paranoia to be justified, the danger to be real, the story to have villains and conspiracies. The truth was sadder and simpler than the viral theories allowed. This case also revealed limitations in initial investigative approaches. The search perimeter was based on assumptions about how far Lars could reasonably travel, but those assumptions didn't account for someone in an altered mental state, possibly running for hours in sheer panic. The medical investigation focused on his eardrum and potential concussion, but didn't deeply explore medication side effects that, while rare, were documented and possible. The 2025 resolution came from persistence, technological advancement, and a willingness to look at the evidence without the preconceptions that had shaped earlier efforts. Sometimes the most puzzling mysteries have answers that are neither exciting nor sinister, just unbearably sad. The aftermath and unanswered questions. Sandra Mittank finally has closure after 11 years of searching. In statements to German media, she expressed relief at knowing what happened to her son, even as she mourned the tragedy of preventable circumstances. She's advocated for better awareness of antibiotic psychiatric side effects and improved protocols for treating tourists who experience medical emergencies abroad. Bulgarian authorities closed the case as an accidental death, noting systemic improvements in search operations and interagency cooperation that have been implemented since 2014. The clinic where Lars was treated released a statement noting that fluoroquinolone reactions remain rare and unpredictable, and that the prescription was medically appropriate for his condition at the time. Some questions remain without answers. We'll never know Lars's exact thoughts during those final hours, or the specific moment his panic overtook his judgment. The men from the bar fight were never identified, leaving that piece of the story incomplete, though ultimately irrelevant to how Lars died. And there's a lingering sadness in knowing that if just one or two factors had been different, a different antibiotic prescribed, a friend staying behind, Lars checking the medication side effects online, this entire tragedy might have been avoided. But the central mystery that haunted the internet for over a decade has been solved. Lars Mittank didn't vanish into a criminal underworld or start a new life under a new identity. He was a young man who had a bad reaction to medication at the worst possible time, in the worst possible place, and made a panicked decision that cost him his life. The truth was hiding in medical records and wilderness terrain all along, waiting for investigators with the right tools and perspective to find it.